It began like a glitch in the algorithm, a strange ripple across the internet that grew into a storm. One moment, people were casually scrolling. The next moment, entire comment sections were melting down, screaming that Ariana Grande needed to be rescued from Cynthia Erivo. And honestly, it felt as if the whole online world had suddenly decided to play hero in a movie no one had officially cast them in. Chinese clips exploded across timelines, fan edits erupted, someone layered dramatic theatrical music over a single interaction, and then, almost overnight, a narrative took off like wildfire. Cynthia is controlling. No evidence. No receipts. Just vibes, edits, and a dangerously contagious assumption. And the most ironic twist? This frenzy did not even begin with Ariana. Not even close. It sparked from her brother, Frankie Grande, cheering from the sidelines with the enthusiasm of someone witnessing history. He was tearing up on Instagram during their Oscars performance of Defying Gravity, calling it the gay Super Bowl. He celebrated their bond like it was sacred. He posted endlessly about how proud he felt, how iconic they looked together, and how unstoppable their energy appeared. If anyone knows Ariana beyond the pop culture illusions, it is him. And he was not worried. Not even slightly. Yet somehow, thousands of strangers online decided they had cracked a case before it even existed. But the internet has a supernatural talent for building villains out of thin air. One TikTok edit later, and Cynthia was suddenly being painted as the wicked witch of emotional manipulation. People were typing dissertations in the comments, acting like detectives who had uncovered a scandalous psychological thriller, when in reality they were reacting to cropped clips and mood lighting. So let us rewind, because the dramatic plot twist energy online is spiraling faster than a Broadway spotlight. Ariana and Cynthia have become inseparable forces. In interviews, red carpets, press tours, if one steps left, the other glides right beside her as if they rehearsed it. The aura between them is intense. Fans take every moment and edit it into romantic movie trailers, whispering theories about soul ties and hidden emotional chemistry. Quotes, poems, aesthetic posts, color-coded auras, anything they share becomes fuel for speculation. And yes, Cynthia is always the first to move. Always the one leaning in, stepping forward, creating a shield before anyone even realizes Ariana might need it. If Ariana's expression shifts even an inch, Cynthia is already preparing to intercept the world on her behalf. It is protective. It is intimate. It is powerful. And for some people, it is suspicious. Because Ariana grows quieter when Cynthia is near. The volume of her presence softens, as if she allows Cynthia to speak for both of them. For some fans, that feels comforting. For others, it looks like the first chapter of a controlling dynamic. And the internet, hungry for a villain, desperate for a storyline, has chosen to see it as a red flag wrapped in glitter. But the truth? The truth is more complicated, more layered, and far more fascinating than a viral edit with ominous piano music. There is a moment, subtle but unmistakable, where Ariana lets Cynthia move first, speak first, guide first. It is not weakness. It is not submission. It is something far more human. Ariana simply feels safer when Cynthia is near, and that safety radiates through their interactions like a quiet protective shield. But of course, the internet sees tenderness and immediately turns it into a coded message, a warning sign, a plot twist in a psychological thriller no one actually wrote. Overnight, a gentle dynamic became a flashing red alarm for people who have never even breathed the same air as either woman. And here is the infuriating part: whenever two women share a connection that is deep, emotional, trusting, and beautifully supportive, the internet suddenly transforms into a panel of amateur therapists. Strangers start diagnosing friendships as if they are case studies in a crime documentary. People romanticize every lingering glance, every affectionate hug, and then they twist that same closeness into the darkest possible theories. It is as if the audience loves a powerful Hollywood bond only until that bond becomes too strong for them to categorize or control. But let us take a breath and remember what is actually happening here. Ariana and Cynthia are standing in the center of the biggest career milestone they have ever touched. Wicked is not just another film release. These movies have shattered records, becoming the most successful Broadway-to-film adaptations ever created. Both Part 1 and Part 2 surged past the hundreds of millions worldwide, showered in praise, debated endlessly by critics, adored by audiences. And with that level of success comes a tidal wave of pressure, but also an overwhelming amount of joy. So yes, maybe they cling to each other. Maybe they celebrate together. Maybe they lean into the only person who understands what it truly felt like to carry this project on their backs. That is not suspicious. That is called pride. That is called gratitude. That is called "we did this." And Cynthia, oh, people love pretending she just materialized from thin air. As if she is some mysterious outsider invading Hollywood through Ariana's orbit. They conveniently ignore the Tony, the Grammy, and the Emmy. They erase her breathtaking performance in The Color Purple, her role as co-producer on the Tony-nominated Fathom, her work hosting the 2025 Tony Awards. For years she has been respected, celebrated, admired by those who actually know the industry. It is strange, is it not? No one called her controlling back then. No one labeled her emotionally aggressive. She was simply brilliant, expressive, admired. The problem only appeared when she became close to Ariana Grande. And now we reach the uncomfortable truth that people pretend not to see. So much of this outrage is not about protecting Ariana. It is projection. It is people watching a friendship they do not understand and filtering it through their own emotional wounds. If someone has never been supported without conditions, then unconditional care looks suspicious. If someone has only known closeness that comes with strings, then healthy boundaries look manipulative. People start calling comfort control because they genuinely do not know what healthy support feels like. And then there is the other truth, the one social media tiptoes around but cannot hide forever, the double standard. The moment a black woman shows leadership, assertiveness, or protective instincts, the tone shifts. Suddenly words like possessive, intimidating, and overbearing start trending. Yet when the same behavior comes from a white woman, it is framed as ride-or-die loyalty, fierce devotion, or iconic best friend energy. That bias has been here the whole time, shaping reactions in silence. Before anyone crowns themselves a detective over a 3-second edited clip, let us remember something far more important. Ariana has openly struggled with anxiety in high-pressure environments for years. Flashing cameras, shoved microphones, crowds pressing in from every side. That type of environment can swallow you whole in an instant. So if Cynthia steps forward before Ariana even forms a sentence, maybe it is not dominance. Maybe it is instinct. Maybe it is someone who knows your breathing patterns better than strangers ever will. That is not manipulation. That is love in its most platonic and protective form. That is a friend who sees you, even when you cannot speak. And now we enter the obsession point, dependence. Fans have convinced themselves that Ariana cannot take a step without Cynthia at her side. They claim that two women walking together is evidence of something sinister. They take normal human behavior and stretch it into a conspiracy because conspiracy is easier to click on than the truth. But imagine being Ariana for a moment. Truly imagine it. You are navigating the most important press cycle of your entire career. Every interview is dissected. Every expression becomes a headline. Every breath becomes content. You are standing inside a cultural hurricane. In that chaos, the only person who understands the weight of the storm is right beside you. Why would you not stay close? Why would you not cling to the one person who feels grounding, familiar, stabilizing? Calmness becomes incredibly rare. Privacy dissolves. And you begin to survive by staying close to the people who make you feel human again. But the plot twist that ignited half of these theories is almost laughably mundane. When Ariana and Cynthia skipped parts of the press run, fans created stories about tension, secret fights, emotional manipulation, and silent breakdowns. What actually happened was brutally simple. Cynthia lost her voice. Not symbolically. Not interpretively. She literally could not speak. Days and days of non-stop interviews, singing demands, and overwhelming travel destroyed her voice. For a singer, for an actor, for someone whose entire craft depends on vocal expression, that is terrifying. It is isolating. It is painful in ways most people will never understand. And Ariana refused to leave her behind. She refused to sit in interviews smiling politely while the woman who carried the film with her was at home struggling to recover. Ariana skipped out in solidarity because loyalty meant more to her than publicity. That is not obsession. That is not manipulation. That is not a scandal. That is humanity at its most honest. And yet, the internet twisted it anyway. Ariana's decision was never a plot twist. It was never a shocking turn in some imaginary thriller. It was entirely consistent with who she has shown herself to be, time and time again. Ariana attaches deeply. She cares fiercely. She protects with her whole heart, even when it drags her straight into the line of fire. From the friends she supported through trauma to the collaborators she defended when the internet sharpened its knives, this is who she has always been. So why, suddenly, is her loyalty to Cynthia being treated like evidence in a crime? Why has compassion turned into a red flag? Perhaps because certain corners of the internet no longer recognize genuine care at all. Everything must be dramatic now. Everything must be a storyline, a twist, a secret motive waiting to be exposed. People glance at friendship and immediately search for the betrayal arc. And just when you think the rumor mill could not get louder, the internet shifts to its newest obsession, the whispers that Ariana might cancel her 2026 Eternal Sunshine tour entirely. Fan pages and gossip accounts spin the same narrative like a carousel. She is exhausted, they claim. She is overwhelmed, burned out, attacked from every angle. The criticism, the harassment, the invasive commentary on her personal life, piled on top of the simple human reality that she tested positive for COVID. That is not scandal. That is not drama. That is a person dealing with pressure that would crush most of us. Touring is brutal. People glamorize the stage lights but ignore the reality: vocal strain, adrenaline whiplash, 10-hour rehearsals, travel that shatters your sleep cycle, and performing at 100% when your body feels like it only has 40% left. If she chooses to cancel, it would be for one reason alone: self-preservation. Her health. Her survival. But the internet always demands a darker angle. What if someone is influencing her? What if something else is happening behind the scenes? And instantly, a logical decision becomes the launchpad for a cinematic conspiracy. Then you enter the comment sections, those unfiltered arenas where logic evaporates and overanalysis becomes a competitive sport. Scroll for 10 seconds and you will find dissertations written by people who believe they have insider knowledge despite having absolutely none. One person insists Ariana is being controlled. Another claims Cynthia's presence is dangerous. Someone else wonders why Ariana needs Cynthia so much, as if needing a supportive friend is a moral offense. Then the faux concern appears, comments dripping with judgment disguised as empathy. How convenient, they murmur. How Cynthia must love that no one is questioning her strange behavior. Strange behavior? Supporting someone? Standing beside her? Existing in public? Since when did friendship become suspicious? Then comes the dagger, sharp, rhetorical, devastating. How much power does that woman have over Ariana? And suddenly you realize this conversation is no longer about Ariana or Cynthia. It is about something primitive in the audience, the desire to believe in puppet master stories. They want Ariana as the fragile heroine, Cynthia as the shadowy manipulator, and themselves as the valiant investigators revealing the truth. It is projection, pure and simple. It is easier for them to imagine Ariana being controlled than to accept that she might simply trust someone they cannot categorize. It is easier to assign a sinister motive than to accept that not everything is a scandal waiting to be exposed. This is the conspiracy mindset in its most distilled form. It begins with a grain of truth, then mutates into layers of panic, speculation, personal trauma, and storytelling. Two women walking together becomes proof. A skipped interview becomes evidence. A cancelled tour becomes a cry for help. The fans who claim to love Ariana the most become the ones building the darkest narrative around her. They forget she is an adult, fully capable of making choices without falling under anyone's spell. They forget she has autonomy, boundaries, intelligence, and agency. And ironically, this mindset, painted as concern, becomes the most disrespectful thing that can be projected onto her. Because the truth, stripped of sensationalism, is incredibly simple. Ariana and Cynthia are colleagues who became friends while creating a project that carried unimaginable pressure and even greater emotional weight. They celebrated together. They struggled together. They protected one another in environments that are brutal even for the strongest performers. They leaned on one another because they were surrounded by noise, scrutiny, and expectations that would overwhelm anyone. Their loyalty is not suspicious. Their closeness is not a crime. Not every connection is a conspiracy. Sometimes two people genuinely care about one another, even in Hollywood, even under the world's glare, even when the internet is determined to twist it into a narrative that fits their obsession. But the internet never accepts the simplest explanation. If Ariana remains silent, she is hiding something. If she defends Cynthia, she is controlled. If she takes space, she is abandoning her. No matter what she does, it becomes evidence for a theory that fans already decided must be true. In these echo chambers, reason is drowned by sensationalism. Drama rises faster than accuracy. And that is exactly why stepping back and remembering the humanity behind the headlines matters. The truth is too boring to go viral. It is too calm, too balanced, too human. So people invent, speculate, and escalate. Meanwhile, Ariana is simply trying to heal, to regain energy, to breathe without the weight of the world pressing on her chest. Cynthia is trying to recover her voice without being vilified for daring to have a friend. And both of them are simply trying to exist without every step becoming evidence. And perhaps the most ironic twist is this: the conspiracy theories say far more about the people spinning them than they ever will about Ariana or Cynthia. Because everything, eventually, becomes a plot in the eyes of those searching for drama. Cynthia becomes the mastermind. Ariana becomes the puppet. But scroll far enough and you will see another truth peeking through the noise. Insolidarity is not manipulation. It is not coded language. It is one woman refusing to step into a media storm without the person who makes her feel grounded. The internet wants a thriller. The reality is much softer, much simpler, and far more human. Ariana just does not want to face relentless interviews without the one person who makes her feel safe, stable, and genuinely understood. And honestly, that is the most relatable part of this entire story. One side sees control, manipulation, puppetry, and secret motives lurking behind every glance. The other side sees comfort, partnership, steadiness, and trust. And truthfully, the reality almost certainly leans closer to the second one, because most genuine friendships in this world do. But the internet refuses to let softness exist without corrupting it. There is almost a collective allergy to tenderness now. Anytime two women share closeness, that closeness must be twisted, dissected, pathologized, and stamped with psychological terminology that half the commenters barely understand. People have convinced themselves that the only reason two women could rely on each other so deeply is if something inside them is fractured, wounded, or fundamentally damaged. The word trauma bond has been thrown around like it is a punchline instead of a clinical concept. The armchair psychology is endless. A screenshot becomes a symptom. A hug becomes a coded warning. A shared laugh becomes a diagnostic clue in a fantasy they insist is real. Every moment of human affection is twisted into evidence for a pathology that no one actually has the authority to diagnose. It is absurd, but more than that, it is heartbreaking. Because it shows just how far people have drifted from recognizing simple human connection. And the truth is, none of us know what Ariana is carrying behind closed doors. None of us know the pressure that has been stacking on her shoulders for years. The weight of global expectations, the scrutiny over every lyric, every role, every relationship rumor. We do not know what fears she wakes up with. We do not know how exhausting it feels to spend years fighting a battle with the internet's interpretations of her existence. We do not know what helps her stay steady, the routines, the conversations, the safe people who keep her grounded when the noise becomes unbearable. But the internet despises not knowing. Silence becomes a blank screen people rush to paint with their own projections. They imagine shadows where none exist, then convince themselves that the shadows must be real simply because they created them. And once people decide that something sinister is happening, they twist every moment to prove their theory. If Ariana laughs, they say she is masking. If she leans on Cynthia, they call it dangerous dependence. If Cynthia appears, they claim dominance. If Cynthia does not appear, they claim Ariana is adrift without supervision. There is no world where these women are allowed to simply breathe. People forget the crushing isolation that fame creates. They forget that when the world watches you 24 hours a day, even your joy becomes public property. They forget that privacy dissolves and the only refuge left is the people who understand what the storm feels like from inside its center. You cling to those people not because you are fragile, but because you are human. Because sometimes one person becomes your anchor, the one who sees the real you beneath the headlines, beneath the glitter, beneath the expectations. So before the internet rushes to diagnose a dangerous dependency, maybe pause. Not every bond is born from trauma. Some are born from trust. From recognition. From calm.